That way they still get their way.
Mm-hmm.
And you think in court they would win, probably.
Yeah, what would a judge do though? Like what would and then it's really about, to be honest with you, it's about the creating the political climate in which an unpopular policy can be adopted by a governor's secretary, or excuse me, agency of natural resources secretary. Right, Julie Moore is tough. She believes in this stuff. She's passionate about climate change, but she's not going to just say, "Oh, geez." But under a different governor, a different secretary could say, "My hands are tied. I have to do this. I'm sorry you don't like it, lawmakers and people, but that's a." So then a lawmaker has to, or excuse me, the next governor has to either back up her play or his play, or say, "No, I'm sorry."
Oh, yeah.
So it's gonna be. I'm gonna be busy. I'm telling you, for another 5 years. This stuff. This isn't a simple. Let's have a vote and okay, moving on to the next thing. This is gonna be an ongoing saga.
Yeah, no doubt. I got cut off at the city council meeting last night.
You spoke too long? I missed it.
No, WPTZ carries it. I spoke, it was Joan Shannon's last city council meeting last night after 22 years.
Oh.
So some of her former colleagues went,
Right.
said some nice things about
Oh, and they cut you
it. And I
off?
was wrapping up and
Saying something
the
nice?
president of the council, yeah, it's not gonna go say that. I was super. And all of a sudden he breaks, and PTZ carries this, like, what?
So the way they set it up, so Brian's reading the intro to it.
Uh-huh.
He says supporters were given 2 minutes to show their support for Joan. And then they show a clip of Jane Nodell. Then they set it up. Then
Right.
they show a clip of Kurt.
Uh-huh.
And he says what he's saying, and then he gets cut off.
And I'm saying, like, I'm wrapping up, but I'm saying, and I'll never forget, and then they can.
Wait, PTZ cut you off or Joan cut you off?
No, PTZ carried it. They carried it in their news. Like, I was like, why did PTZ decide to carry me being cut off?
But why did you get cut off? I'm so confused.
Oh, because there's a time limit, right?
Oh,
But still, so Ben Travers.
But Ben was enforcing that.
He's the little thing, and he goes, you're sorry, you're in the middle of the sentence, he goes, sorry, you know how this works, I was president of the council, obviously.
Right.
You know how this works, I gotta cut you off.
Right.
So, but what they didn't carry was me saying, actually, President Travers, the way I handled it when I was president was, you got to finish your last sentence or two. You didn't just cut, I didn't cut somebody off.
Oh, that's pretty good.
So I've been saying earlier in the show, I was saying, there'll be payback. Ben Travers will be on the show, and I'm
Right.
actually cut it and have him cut off. And Peter
Right.
interviews next year.
Here it is.
Travers, walking into the council chamber.
For many years in sincerity and conviction.
Oh, look at that, right on
She
PTZ.
done speaking. You know exactly where she stands.
And we can't thank you enough for all you've done for all of us, for the city for all these years. And of course, I will never forget you when you're done, Kurt. Sorry to cut you off. Losing my dog. You know how it goes, Kurt. I gotta cut you off.
Everybody's laughing.
At least Joan laughed.
That is
Why
pretty
did
funny.
PTZ decide to carry that?
Wednesday morning, then we get a few more breaks of sunshine before clouds roll in again. Isolated showers will be moving through the area
Your old
Wednesday
employer.
afternoon, and highs will be reaching
What's that?
the low
I said your old
40s.
employer.
On Channel 3, first
Yeah, that's
alert
right.
meteorologist
How long
Allison
ago? What was the last time you did
Thanks,
that?
Allison.
1996 to
Currently around
98.
Champlain Valley. It is still cold. Be careful. There might be some black ice out there. 30 in Burlington, 32 in Plattsburgh, and 28 degrees in Middlebury and in St. Albans.
Welcome back to the morning drive, everybody. Anthony has queued up Elton John songs on his 78th birthday. We are back, and it's time for the segment with Matt Coda from Meadow Hill Consulting and former reporter for WPTZ News. Did you ever interview me back when you were?
Oh, yes, right outside Carrie's Quick Stop. I remember that very much.
What was the
This
issue?
young, up-and-coming Republican candidate for city council. I'm sure we were talking about something to do with beer sales or something. But yeah, I was a reporter
I
at
thought you
WPTZ from 1996 through 1998. In fact, I was the one that raised my hand and said, you know what? I'd really like to cover the legislature. And then news director Stuart Ledbetter said, kid, you're too young. But then no one else raised their hand. So all of a sudden I was 22 years old and covering the legislature for
Wow.
WPTC.
Yeah.
I like that
And
story.
that was a serious
But
newsroom.
Stuart
when
actually-
Stuart was running it.
Yes, it
Stuart
was.
actually
yeah.
started out saying, "You're too young, kid."
Yeah. Greg Lagerquist, you remember him? He was a reporter there. We had a great team
Yeah.
back in my day.
Big time.
A lot of them have moved on to bigger and better things in Boston stations. And
Yeah.
I'm still here.
And you're probably going to be here 78 years working on the clean heat standard and global warming solutions.
Well, that's one of the things I love my job. There's always things happening in energy and transportation in Montpelier and Washington, D.C., and it affects all of us, right? We all drive
Wait,
a car.
before we get
and-
into all
yeah.
that, I just have to ask you. I want to go back to what made you not continue on as in media in journalism?
Well, actually, I left Burlington, and I met my now wife, and she was a student at UVM, and she said, "Well, I've lived all my life in Vermont. I want to move to California." And I said, "Well, I got this great job. I'm making $17,000 a year working for Stuart Ledbetter and covering the legislature. I found my dream job at age 22." And she said, "Well, I'm leaving." And I said, "Well, all right, well, maybe I'll go with you." So I ended up in Santa Barbara, California, where I was the NBC bureau chief out there, and that worked out quite well. And I thought I was going to be there for 18 months, but then you hang out on the beach in Santa Barbara, California, and then you're like, maybe we could stay here 10 years, which
And
we did.
you were the bureau chief.
Yes, it was a great job.
In
Great
Santa
job.
Barbara.
Yeah. It was,
See, now sometimes it's worth following your heart.
you know what? Sarah was right. I followed her, and everything worked out great. Both our kids were born out there, and then we came to the realization that, well, maybe we want to be closer to home, closer to family, so the kids know their grandparents and their cousins and all that. So we came back to Vermont, and it all worked out great.
And here it is. There's the rest of the
The
story.
rest of the story. I'll tell you though, the 90s news operation at PTZ created a lot of heavy hitters all throughout the country in news. Yeah.
Yeah,
I can't-
whenever I turn on the news in Boston, I'm like, I remember her. I remember
I
him.
can't wait till the next time I see Stuart Ledbetter to say, "What do you mean he was too young?"
Oh.
Come on, Stuart. He wasn't-
Well, that was back in the day when Brian Joyce was running the crime beat, and I was
Yeah.
chasing him around trying to find stories, and he was beating me every step of the way.
Yeah, he was up against some serious
Yeah.
competition.
Boy, I was.
All right, so let's get down to business here now. What's the latest? Is there a vote potentially coming up on the Senate floor in regard to the clean heat standard?
Yeah, no, I know. Last time I was here last Tuesday, I said it was pending, it was coming, it was going to be here. By the time I come back on Tuesday, it's all going to be settled. It's not.
Well,
you
it got-
know, these
it-
things happen in government.
It got
Things
sent to the finance
get
committee.
sent to a committee. The committee had discussion. There was an amendment. There was a pause, and then there was another amendment. There'll likely be another amendment in front of the appropriations committee. Again, this is the bill that does two things. One, it repeals most of the clean heat standard,
Except the registry.
except for the registry, and it also does another thing, which it empowers Efficiency Vermont to spend more of the money that it collects from ratepayers on things that increase electricity, such as electric heat pumps.
The governor was on the show the day or 2 days after you were on. No, the day after, Wednesday. And you could read between the lines pretty clearly that if this was to land on his desk as it is, I'm pretty sure he's vetoing it.
Well, I don't know, but this is classic.
Well, he said he could not support
Oh,
the second part of the bill.
I didn't hear that part.
He said he could not support that.
Yeah, the challenge with any piece of legislation is you get some things that some people like and some things that people don't like, and whether or not they'll agree that the bill as a whole is better than we were without it. And there's some people that do not want to repeal the clean heat standard, even if it's only a resolution, because clean heat standard is not being enforced right now on consumers. So repealing it is what are we doing if we're repealing something that's not enacted? The registry stays, but that's already enacted. So there's some confusion there. And then there's the other piece, which some people like and others don't. And so it won't be a strict party line vote, which is unusual, particularly with energy legislation.
Do you think any Republican, though, will vote? Oh, well, Scott Beck supported it in committee.
He did.
At least a couple members of Republicans voted for it in committee.
Yeah.
But didn't Beck also say that he didn't, his vote in committee did not guarantee his vote on the floor? I thought that's what I heard.
Yeah, I mean, back to the parliamentary procedures, you get two bills that are married together, when you get them on the floor, is there a chance to vote on them separately through a process called division? Yeah, that's possible. And we may see that on, I don't think it'll be today, it'll probably be Wednesday or Thursday. But it's moving. It'll be out of the Senate by the end of the week and over to the House, where they'll have a chance to think about whether they want to pass it as is or make amendments of their own or just leave it on the wall and forget about it.
So I said this to the governor, and I've said it a few times on the air, and I want to simplify it so people understand it. And I don't think people, when we talk about all this stuff about, and you have to be nicer about it. But the reality is, Efficiency Vermont, we've been paying, you look at your electric bill, oh, I'm paying an efficiency charge. It's helping us burn or use less electricity. La 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 la, and I've been going on all these years. I did not willingly pay an efficiency charge on my electricity to increase the consumption of electricity and use it as a Global Warming Solutions Act finance tool. And when you explain to people that that's ostensibly what the 65, the bill is, people are like, what? You're kidding. I'm like, no, they want to take the money from Efficiency Vermont that we all paid in to help burn less electricity and use it for something else.
That's right. Well, that's why Efficiency Vermont was created. It was created with this express purpose to reduce electricity consumption, with the theory being, if we use LED light bulbs, less incandescent light bulbs, if we're more efficient with how we electrify our homes and businesses, then we'll not need to build another coal plant, another nuclear power plant. We'll not have to build more poles and wires to transmit that energy. And that changed, right? That flipped, that energy policy in Vermont changed from getting the least cost electron to getting the one that comes from a renewable resource. And rather than getting the least cost source to heat your home, it became about finding a way to heat your home that emits less greenhouse gas emissions. That was the sea change that happened around the time of the Shumlin administration. And now we're in this world where electric utilities are promoting electric cars and electric heat, and Efficiency Vermont also plays a role in that. But who should have the power to determine what incentives should go to the consumer? Should it be the government? Should it be Efficiency Vermont? Should it be the electric utilities? That's the fundamental questions that lawmakers are wrestling with.
We're talking to Matt Coda from Meadow Hill Consulting. We talk about energy and transportation issues with him. And the Morning Drive hotline is open, 888-414-0303. If you've got a question for Matt, give us a call. Even if you disagree with him, you can call.
Yes, I do.
He'll take
I
that
love
on.
it.
Yeah, you want to break now? And we got to take a real quick break, so we're going to do that now. If you want to call and join the conversation during the break, you know the number, 888-414-0303, and we'll be back in 90 seconds with Matt Coda.
It's almost time for the third annual Jenna's
So,
Promise Silent and Live
I think
auction
we
to
might have the
support Vermont's
votes
recovery community.
in
We
House
welcome
Transportation
sponsorships, donations of services,
to fix
and
this
new
truck
items.
rule.
The auction will take place on
So
April
remember, in
11th
New York,
from 5 to
Massachusetts,
9
they've
p.m.
already,
This year we'll
the
include
date has
dinner
already been
and
implemented.
music by
I
Vermont
talked to a
guitar soloist
truck dealer who's
Bob
going to
Kennedy.
testify on
Tickets
Thursday.
to
He's going to say, listen, in New
and are
York,
on sale now
I
at
cannot
jennaspromise.org.
accept
Limited
orders for
tickets
truck.
available.
Imagine
Can't
being
wait
in
to share this
business
special
and
night
customers
with
saying, I
you all.
want to buy that
Proceeds
diesel
support
truck, and
Jenna's
saying,
Promise
listen,
and
I
Vermont's
can't do
recovery
it because I don't
community.
have it, because I have to buy this electric truck that's going to sit on my lot and rust, and my boss is telling me he's not going to do that. He's going to wait it out.
I told you I kind of got into it with Marcus on the air. And he goes, no, they're just going to ignore that. I'm like, they're not going to ignore the law.
They're
And
certainly
that's
not.
what's really happening.
But what he may be referring to, which is what the other side is saying, which is you don't have to comply on day one.
Now, this is
Like what they're saying is
House-
your manufacturers, they're treating you wrong. They shouldn't be
Well,
doing
so
that.
House-
They have multiple years to comply.
So
And
House Transportation has what in front of it? This is the
so it's a bill. It's H. It is H. It's called H65. Well, that's funny. It's an H bill with the same number as the S bill.
Oh, that's easy to remember.
H65.
what is the
It's a House bill to repeal Vermont's advanced clean vehicle regulations, which requires us to sell battery electric.
Welcome back to the Morning Drive, everybody. We are back, and we're talking with Matt Coda from Meadow Hill Consulting. If you have a question for Matt about energy or transportation policies in the state of Vermont, everything's percolating in Montpelier right now. give us a call on the Morning Drive hotline, 888-414-0303. Matt, what's the latest? I know we were talking off air about what's going on in House transportation.
Yeah, so not to confuse the listeners, but there's another bill named 65. That's House Bill 65. And that's the bill that repeals a 2022 regulation that requires manufacturers of vehicles, both cars and trucks, heavy-duty trucks and tractor-trailers, to deliver to Vermont an ever-increasing number of battery electric vehicles. It starts with model year 2026, whereas the pleasure cars, the light-duty vehicles, 35% delivered to Vermont must be battery electric, all the way up to 100% in 2035. That's the California standard. That's the standard that Vermont adopted. And there's also another part of the rule which says that heavy-duty trucks, think of the tractor-trailer trucks or the delivery trucks, they have to be 10% battery electric in 2026, and by the end of the decade, they have to be 50%. So there is a bill that will repeal that regulation, that will no longer require Vermont to follow California in mandating that battery electric vehicles fill the lots of all the car dealers and truck dealers in Vermont. And it's starting to get some attention because in New York, the truck rule, in Massachusetts, the truck rule is already in effect. They beat us to the punch. They're 1 year ahead of us. So beginning with model year 2025, they're starting to see more requirements in those states of having battery electric trucks delivered to those lots. These are heavy-duty trucks. These are commercial trucks. These are tools. They're not toys, and they're having trouble filling orders because the manufacturers realize that if this stays in place, that they're going to have to purchase electric vehicles, trucks that frankly cost 2.5 times as much as a diesel truck and don't have the same utility as a diesel truck. So they're really struggling to fill orders from customers, wondering whether or not these rules are going to be repealed either at the state level in Albany, in Boston, in Montpelier, or at the federal level. But right now we have the laws are still on the books, and there are different ways to remove those restrictions, those regulations. One of them is called H65, and there'll be a hearing on Thursday in the House Transportation Committee.
And do your inside sources say there's a chance that this could pass, that the repeal could pass? Who sponsored this?
There was Representative Higley was the lead sponsor, but there are
Quite a few.
dozens of sponsors of H65.
Any outside the Republican Party?
I'd have to review the list, but I think there is sympathy. The fact that car dealers and truck dealers are caught in the middle of this crossfire. The manufacturers are the ones that must comply. They either have to deliver electric vehicles to Vermont or sell less diesel or gas vehicles in Vermont, or purchase credits from manufacturers that overproduce, or pay fees. And there is flexibility in how manufacturers comply. Unfortunately, all that flexibility harms the local car and truck dealers who are trying to fill their customers' orders. So I think there is some recognition and some sympathy, frankly, from all the lawmakers that the local dealers are trying to sell what their customers want. They certainly aren't opposed to selling battery electric vehicles, but when someone comes and says, "Hey, listen, I need to drive to a farm in East Eden and haul milk. I can't have an electric truck," they say, "Okay, but this is the problem."
Now, I know of one electric truck that the feds paid for Ben and Jerry's to move. It's a pup that move trucks around, trailers around. Do you know of anybody using an electric 18-wheeler in Vermont?
I do not.
Okay.
Do they exist? Yes. Are they commercially widely available? No. Is the charging infrastructure available for such a rural state like Vermont? No, it's not. Especially when you think about what our trucks do. We have more dirt roads than paved roads in Vermont. I don't know if you knew that, Anthony.
Oh, yeah.
But in our trucks go to those dirt roads, whether they're delivering heating oil or propane.
I did not know that. I know there's a lot of dirt roads, but I didn't. There's
Yeah,
still more dirt roads.
8,000
than
miles
paved.
of dirt roads, 6,000 miles of paved roads.
We
would
need
not-
to keep the Flatlanders slow down.
I would not have guessed that. I would not, because I know dirt roads that have been replaced, but
Too much time in Chittenden County.
But think about our
no, this is Addison.
Think about our
This is
agricultural
bigger.
economy and how much we depend on dairy. And
Yeah.
those dairy, you can't just have cows. You got to have trucks that get the milk
Right.
from the cows to the creamery, from the creamery to wherever they're
Yeah.
developing the products. And our timber industry. I mean, our logging industry is really important to our economy, our forestry economy. And those trucks drive on dirt roads, and they need diesel.
So you think that could be a close vote in the House Transportation Committee on this bill to repeal having us tied in with California on this?
Well, one step at a time, but it's positive that we're having a discussion, a very fruitful discussion. This will be my third time testifying in that committee about where we are in terms of sales of electric vehicles, where we are in terms of consumer demand, what the regulations mean, what they were. I mean, remember, they were passed in 2022, and they're based on a California law
Right.
that you either go with the feds or you go with California. Vermont, New York, and Massachusetts decided to go with California, and everyone else, including New Hampshire, has the federal standard.
Will the car industry in Vermont be there testifying, do you think?
Yes, so we'll have someone who has direct experience dealing with these orders from their customers and their demands from the manufacturers, both on the car and the truck side. And I really applaud the House Transportation Committee, in particular Chair Walker from Swanton, who has been very open to having these discussions, which have been very respectful
This
of
is
all
what
sides.
I love. I want you at the table at least,
Yeah.
because what we've watched over the last few years, it was only one opinion in committee, over and over and over again.
Well, what a
So-
difference an election makes.
Yeah, well, good, thank God. At least they're having conversations about it, and maybe we can get something done. I'm just dumbfounded that electric trucks in Vermont, we don't even have a place to plug them in.
Right, and remember, electric trucks are tools.
Yeah.
You know, cars you park in your garage overnight and it charges while you sleep. Trucks never sleep.
No.
I mean, the drivers change, but the truck is a tool and it goes to places to pick up product and deliver product. And oftentimes there isn't the charge capacity to deal with such a large battery for such
Well,
a
and they
heavy piece
never
of
stop
equipment.
it, to your point. There's trucks that have millions of miles on them. They just don't stop.
Right. So, I mean, the reality is if you can't buy a new diesel truck, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to rehab the old diesel truck, which, you know, anything older, anything newer is going to be better for the environment by running smoother, running better, using less diesel fuel.
You would hope that they would listen carefully to what our automobile industry says, dealerships say in Vermont, about how it's going to impact them.
Yeah, if you look at the Vermont Auto Dealers Association did an economic study and determined that 18% of the retail workforce is in the auto industry, whether they're selling parts or they're selling cars or they're in the finance industry, financing cars. So it is a significant part of our economy. And of course, every year the purchase and use tax on vehicles contributes about $100 million to well, 2/3 of it goes to the transportation fund and 1/3 goes to the ed fund.
All right, so let's shift gears for a second back to the Global Warming Solutions Act. Can
Yeah.
you talk about the Clean Heat Standard
Sure.
and all that? And is it going to be repealed? Is it going to be repealed as part of this bill? Is the vote going to be divided? All that, which is all important. But then you have this Global Warming Solutions Act out there that there have been sponsors of bills that are sitting on the wall in Montpelier that are meant to either get rid of it or change the mandates to goals, which would be huge because that takes away the lawsuits.
Right.
But if it's not done, if those bills stay on the wall, I mean, we could still get all this stuff no matter what they do with the repeal of the Clean Heat Standard. Is that right?
Yeah, so what's happening right now is there's a couple of bills to repeal the mandates and turn them back into goals, and to also remove the private right of action that allows anyone to sue the state for failing to meet these mandates. And that's House Bill 289. It is receiving testimony in the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee. Secretary Moore testified on that last week. We'll expect to hear more testimony. It's unclear whether it will be successful in passing, but yeah, that's the idea. Whether or not we're seeing all these policies pull back, either being overambitious or just being too complicated or too expensive. Whether it's the Clean Heat Standard or possibly the Clean Cars regulation, we're still working on that. It's not still on the books, but if none of these policies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions are actually enacted, you still have the mandates, and looks like we just missed the 2025 mandate by 1%. You know, it was cold this winter, and heating fuel sales are actually going up. Gasoline sales have flattened, but they are up about 1% from last year. So that's because people are traveling, people are heating their home, and we shouldn't penalize them for that. But the reality is that we're going to hit 2030, and we're probably not going to be 40% below 1990 levels as required by law, and that will likely lead to a lawsuit if this Global Warming Solutions Act is not repealed.
All right. Matt Coda from Meadow Hill Consulting. Again, thanks for being on as you are every Tuesday. Are you testifying anywhere today?
Yeah, not today, but Thursday,
Thursday, and we'll be looking for that clean heat standard vote in
on the Senate
next
floor.
Couple of days, maybe.
Probably Wednesday, maybe Thursday.
All right, and we'll talk to you next Tuesday.
Excellent. Thank you, guys.
And now we've got the
Yeah.
Rice students from Rice, and the music teacher coming up to talk about the big play, Sound of Music.
Yep, coming up right after this.